Hey everyone, Levi here with Trident Fly Fishing, and today we're going to be tying James's sand prawn. Let's get started with a Gamakatsu SL11 3H hook in the vise. This is size 4, but you can tie this down to a 1 or up to a 1/0, all the way down to probably an 8 or a 10 for those piggy bonefish. Let's get started with some Unimono on the shank. We're using 4/1000 diameter. And we're gonna run our thread all the way down to the bend of the hook. This doesn't need to be super neat because this is a fly that you're gonna run back and forth on the shank a number of times. But bring your thread about 20–25% down the bend of the hook. And then we'll clip our excess. And bring our thread right up to the start of the bend and move right into this polar fiber here. And we're gonna grab some of this right from the bottom. We need a nice clump, and we'll even these out. But that's about what we're looking for here. And you can see this fiber is various lengths, so we'll just sort of stack it, grab it from the tips, and reposition this downward because we don't need a whole lot of length to this, but we do want it to be nice and thick. So get in there. These really small ones, we'll get rid of these, but throw those aside because we're going to use them later on in the fly. This is relatively nice. I think we could do a little better on it though. All right, and you don't want these to be, flat straight on the tip. You want a little bit of a variety in their size, but generally the same length. All right, so once you have yourself a nice bunch that's stacked and evened, and you want some thickness to this, you don't want to go in there with just tie it in right off the, it's not a hide, it's a fake hide, but right off there, because it's going to be real long and wispy, and this won't be nice and clean and a solid bunch. So get that stacked, and we will hit it with a pin trap and just bring your thread right on down. You want this to be about 3/4 of the length of the hook shank. All right, so from there, clean any of that extra out, and you can set that aside, so we'll use it to dub the body. And just go ahead and run your thread all the way back, and that'll help create profile to this fly and save you some steps later. You can throw that aside, and again, we'll use that for dubbing later on. Go ahead and advance your thread right in front of there. So we're gonna grab some of those excess fibers here that we were using, and what we wanna do is just shred it up. You don't have to be neat about this at all, but we need to get this to be sort of the consistency of dubbing. So just shorten the fibers. I'm just breaking it between my fingers and stacking it on top of itself. And we'll do that until we have a nice sort of wispy consistency there. And I'm gonna take a little bit of that, and I'm gonna just dub it right behind the, right behind there that we tied in. Just apply it straight to your thread. And this is gonna act A, to start the profile of this shrimp, and B, it's gonna spread our eyes apart so that they aren't right next to one another. Get a few wraps there. So from there, we're gonna move into a pair of these EP shrimp and crab eyes. This is the color orange, size small. These things are sweet, really realistic. So let's start by just measuring them against the shank. We want them to extend right about to there on the shank, just to create that profile. And we want them to be about 40 to maybe 50% of the way, maybe 40–45% of the way right through that part. So let's trim these. So now that we have our eyes in our hand, what we're gonna do is grab a pair of flat pliers. These have a nice flat portion to them. You need them to be flat. You don't want any ridges in there. And we're just gonna flatten this mono. We'll do it with both eyes. Reason being is a flat piece of mono is a heck of a lot easier to tie in, and it's gonna last a little longer than if it were round. So do that to both eyes, and then we'll get ready to tie them in. And this pattern is real solid for those of you guys who are traveling to the Seychelles. Excellent fly to bring with you and have ready to go, but it's also one that you can take pretty much anywhere there's going to be shrimp on the menu. You could feed striped bass here in New England, shrimp. Tarpon will eat it if you're in Florida and the Keys, the Bahamas, that sort of thing. But a real good pattern to have in the box anytime you're hitting a tropical destination or anywhere that's going to have shrimp on the menu. So get that tied in, and you can just run it all the way back on the hook shank in order to build that profile. Measure our second eye there and get that tied in on the opposing side of your hook shank. You want to make sure they're the same length. And you can help spread them apart if need be. So from here, we're going to move into some 20-pound fluorocarbon. We have one strand of it pre-measured. It's about 5 inches. You want to give yourself a little excess there because this is also going to be your weed guard, but we're going to tie it in and hit it with one securing wrap, and we want to fold this forward like so and then lock it down. This is going to be our keel and also our weed guard. Whenever you're tying this in, you want to make sure it's directly on top of the hook shank and not rolled over to one side or the other. Get that locked in. If you want extra durability, hit it with some sort of glue, head cement, super glue, anything. Clean that up. All right, so from here, we're gonna move into some barred micro crusher legs. Color sand clear. It's a real nice compliment to this fly. We need 3 legs for this, so pop a piece off. We want them to be about 1.5 inches for this size 4 fly. So let's snip that, measure a second set, snip it, and we were able to get all 3 legs from there. One of them's a little shorter. We'll use that for our rear set of legs. Usually insects have some natural taper to them. And we'll start this one right behind that mono we tied in. Take it, hit it with one wrap off to the side, and you can do some loose wraps so you can manipulate it with your hand. You want these to be off to either side. Sometimes it can be tricky, and it might take you a few minutes, as you can see. All right, I'm okay with that. So we're gonna do that 2 more times. Pull that forward, and then we'll go ahead and tie it down. Take a few turns of thread behind it and move to your second set of legs. Again, start with it directly across the shank, hit it with a wrap or 2, and then I like to just pull it right like that, and that'll give you a consistent sort of lay on those legs. Take a few more wraps rearward, and one more time. These legs are probably the trickiest part of this whole fly. All right. Manipulate as needed, and that's good. We're gonna move into some UV fly finish. This is the color orange. This stuff's real sweet, and it's gonna create what might be viewed as an egg sac or sort of a hot spot for this fly. We're gonna dub over it, so it's sort of hidden, but when the fly gets wet, you can see it really well, and it looks nice. We're gonna go ahead and just apply this directly behind the legs, and this is gonna be a hot spot. Might imitate an egg sac on a pregnant female. But get yourself a nice bead around the whole hook shank. You don't want it to be huge and protruding, but you do want it to be noticeable. I'm okay with that. So let's get in here with our UV torch and hit it. It helps to have a rotary vise, so you can just rotate the vise without having to manipulate the hook or anything. That's good. And now we will bring our thread. Be careful of these legs. For me, I find that it's easiest to look at the bottom of the fly. Bring it right in front of our first set of legs. And we're going to move into those scrap pieces of polar fiber. Again, just shred them. Get everything nice and broken apart. Just hold it in each finger and pull it apart and stack it on top of itself until you're happy with the consistency. I like it to be relatively fine because it dubs easier. And it also just tends to look a little neater overall. But I'm happy with that, so we'll set aside the excess. So get in there, and you can, again, like I said, pull those legs out of the way. And just be mindful of them so you're not messing up all that hard work that you just spent tying them in. You'll see how kind of painful this process is. Again, get behind that first set. I'm gonna retighten that dubbing. And just pull your legs out of the way. And again, you'll see sometimes you'll knock your dubbing. You'll have to just retighten it, but such is life. This last set, pull it out of the way here, towards the tail. Pull it through. See, but it doesn't look good. All right. There we go. And you want to, as you advance rearward, you can go right over that hot spot, but you also want to sort of taper this fly so that it gets thinner as you reach the tail. So we're applying more dubbing now. And we can sort of a little more hastily wrap this now that we're through with the tough part of the legs. And this polar fiber is nice and translucent whenever it gets wet, so that hot spot will show through. So bring that back. Almost done, just one more application of dubbing. And before I get in there, I'm gonna trim these fibers that are bugging me. All right, so hit it with the last few turns of dubbing, and we're gonna leave just a little space here to tie in our keel, which is also gonna be our weed guard. Turn this fly upside down, and we will move into some 3.3 millimeter orange tungsten beads. This is gonna act as a keel, and it's also gonna give a little rattle noise to your fly. So get that. We'll put it down first with the narrow side on the first bead, and then I like to reverse it and hit it with a little larger opening for the second bead. So tie your first one down, put your vise upright, and you want to make sure that this is directly under the hook shank A. Get that leg out of there. And B, you're gonna want to make sure you give yourself enough distance there so you're not sacrificing that movement. So once you're happy with it, get it locked in right under the eye. We'll go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Situate it and measure it against the other to ensure they're the same size. Those loops are the same size, that is. And you can manipulate it if you need to, but that right there is good with me. That doesn't restrict movement, and it also works to keel the fly. Before we tighten our weed guard in, I just want to pull this down on this. We're using a pair of scissors. You can use a bodkin, anything that's strong. And if you pull down, do it from the back side. So if you take that and just pull down, that's going to even everything out as long as you haven't locked in your fluorocarbon there. And you'll see how that made everything nice and even on the bottom. And that way you won't need to worry about one side being longer, one side being shorter. You can see how they're nice and flush now. So now that we have that situated where we wanted, we're just going to pull this fluorocarbon forward and hit it with some securing wraps. And you'll see how that creates a nice weed guard. We'll do that on both sides. And you gotta really lock this in. You can hit it with some glue if you like, but also make sure that it's not cocked off to either side. You want it right over the hook point. And this fluoro is kind of forgiving in that you can manipulate it with your fingers if you're not happy with its positioning. So I'm okay with that. What we're gonna do now is go ahead and snip this right above the hook point. That'll block out anything, whether it's mangroves, rocks, anything like that. And from there, we're gonna move right into a little bit of polar fiber one last time. We don't need a huge bunch, but we need to create the tail of the shrimp. Might be called a telson. If anyone knows, drop that in the comments. I think it is called a telson. But if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. Grab this little clump, cut it, get rid of any super short fibers there. And that could probably be shortened just a little bit. Don't need quite that much. That's probably good. And we're gonna place that right on top of the hook eye and just hit it with a pin trap, a couple securing wraps. You can spread it out if need be, and then we're gonna clip that excess out of the way. We'll hit it with a few turns to clean that up. Get in there with our scissors a little more and get rid of those fibers. But I'm okay with the look on that. That's not a bad place to throw some UV resin after you hit it with a whip finish. So go ahead and whip finish that off. Throw two in there. That is James's sand prawn. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.